This podcast was produced using artificial intelligence and refined by human editors.
Buongiorno, my curious voyagers. Welcome to another scenic ride on Travel with Lara and Luca. I'm Luca, your navigator through the rich tapestry of history, culture, and cuisine.
And I'm Lara, your co-pilot in uncovering the tales and flavors this beautiful world has to offer. Today, we're whisking you away to the stunning stretch of Mediterranean paradise famously known as the Amalfi Coast.
Ah, the Amalfi Coast, a ribbon of road winding between emerald waters and towering cliffs, dotted with pastel-colored villages and lemon-scented breezes. You can almost hear the sea calling, can't you?
I thought that was just you humming in the shower this morning, Luca. But yes, the Amalfi Coast does sing a siren song that's hard to ignore.
Before we venture deeper into the terraced vineyards and sun-kissed piazzas, let's set the stage for our listeners. The Amalfi Coast, or Costiera Amalfitana in Italian, is a 50-kilometer stretch along the southern edge of Italy's Sorrentine Peninsula. Known for its extraordinary beauty and coastal panorama, the area is a UNESCO World Heritage Site that bewitches everyone who visits.
Spellbound and possibly never to return home. That's the real danger. Seriously, folks, you might just fall in love and start looking up real estate prices or how to marry a local barista, and trust me, they do brew a mean espresso.
They say that the Amalfi Coast is where the mountains meet the sea in a symphony of romance. Picture this. Dramatic cliffs drop off to reveal picturesque towns like Positano, Amalfi, and Ravello, each with their own charm and secrets.
Speaking of secrets, you haven't lived until you've tried to squeeze past a bus on those narrow roads with nothing but thoughts of homemade gelato motivating your every move.
Only to then be smacked in the face with a panorama so breathtaking that you forget whether you were even holding your breath in the first place.
And with each bend, Luca, there's a chance to discover not just a new view, but a new story. These towns hold on to history like Nana clings to her secret pasta sauce recipe. For instance, did you know Amalfi was one of the 4 maritime republics of Italy?
Oh, an overwhelming power in maritime trade during the Middle Ages, competing with the likes of Pisa, Genoa, and Venice.
That's right. And today, while the galleons and the merchant ships are long gone, the richness of history permeates every cobblestone and corner of this coast.
Lara's not kidding about the cobblestone, by the way. Ladies and gentlemen, leave your stilettos at home. The Amalfi Coast is the undefeated champion in a match against high heels. Words to live by, Lara. Now, dear listeners, as we journey today through our stories and discussions, we want you to imagine yourself there, sipping on limoncello under a pergola laden with vines, or perhaps biting into a piece of torta caprese, the local chocolate and almond cake that's a love letter to your taste buds.
Let's not forget the thrill of uncovering those stories hidden away in a rambling garden or behind the shutters of a sun-bleached villa.
Every place here tells a tale, whether it's a famed cathedral, a bustling piazza, or a whispering grotto. And we're here to share those tales with you, with our own twist, of course, involving the occasional guffaw-worthy mishap. Here on the Amalfi Coast, I've had my share of, let's call them cultural exchanges, that were slightly less dulcet than intended.
And that's the beauty of travel, isn't it? The unpredictable, the unusual, the unforgettable moments that weave the fabric of an adventure.
Exactly, Lara. Our podcast today will unravel the Amalfi Coast, one laugh, one story, and one piece of advice at a time. From must-see places to gastronomic wonders, strange facts, and invaluable travel tips, we've got your itinerary covered.
Get your notebooks ready, or just let your imagination sail as we embark on this coastal odyssey.
All right, my fellow explorers, let's dive into the glittering waters of history and resurface with some of the most precious jewels the Amalfi Coast has offered throughout the centuries.
And trust me when I say the Amalfi Coast isn't just about glitzy hotels and celebrity yachts. It's steeped in a past that's as captivating as the views.
Picture it. We're in the 9th century. Europe is a patchwork of warring factions, and the Mediterranean Sea is a bustling highway for culture, trade, and, well, actual pirates.
Matey. Sorry, I couldn't resist. But yes, in this high-stakes world, the Amalfi Coast emerges as an unlikely powerhouse. This rugged sliver of land, with its steep cliffs and hidden coves, became one of the world's premier maritime republics, alongside Venice, Genoa, and Pisa.
Can you imagine? Little Amalfi, a David among Goliaths. It was the first of the four republics, wielding power across the seas thanks to its innovation in shipbuilding. They're the ones we can thank for the compass, essential for navigators, before the GPS lady started telling us where to turn.
And let's not forget the Tavole Amalfitane, or Amalfi Tables, one of the oldest maritime codes in the world. This was the rule book for the sea, dictating the law for everything from trade agreements to how to deal with pirates. The equivalent of today's traffic laws, if you will. Except, I suppose, seahorses don't get speeding tickets.
If only. But the power and wealth of Amalfi didn't just come from its nautical know-how. The region's merchant prowess was legendary. You see, most of our smartphones and tech gadgets come from the Far East these days, but back then, it was spices, silks, and rare goods traveling along trade routes to Amalfi.
Essentially, they were the Amazon delivery service of the Middle Ages, but instead of drones, they had fleets of ships.
And with such wealth came extravagance. Amalfi and its neighboring towns became adorned with architectural marvels. From grand cathedrals to exquisite villas, the coast was a testament to the opulence that trade brought with it.
It was during this period that Amalfi's iconic cathedral, the Cattedrale di Sant'Andrea, came to be. It's like the stairway to heaven suddenly dropped down into the main piazza, and you'll feel the burn in your thighs to prove it. There are those 62 steps rising before the cathedral, with each one telling its own silent story of the thousands who've climbed them since the 9th century.
Oh, and speaking of Sant'Andrea, St. Andrew, the patron saint of Amalfi. I love this tale. So his remains were brought to the cathedral from Constantinople, and get this, his bones allegedly weep holy water on his feast day.
That's one way to stir up a buzz in the celestial influencer world. But back down to earth, and to less divine weeping, Amalfi's golden age couldn't last forever.
True. The 12th century was a time of change, with the coast besieged by natural disasters like earthquakes and tsunamis. Mother Nature didn't hold back. And man-made ones, like the rivalry between the republics.
Plus, don't forget the pillaging. There was that unfortunate incident in the 12th century when Pisa gave Amalfi a more aggressive kind of visit.
Indeed. That visit came in the form of a naval onslaught that would pillage and plunder the once mighty Amalfi. And what the Pisans left behind, Mother Nature decided to reclaim in 1343 when a tsunami hit, wiping out the port and much of the city's trade infrastructure.
Mother Nature, the ultimate party crasher. But you've got to give it to Amalfi. They hung on to their autonomy until the 19th century when they finally joined the Kingdom of Italy.
The resilience is impressive. But let's jump forward a few hundred years to when a different kind of wave began to sweep the Amalfi Coast. A wave of artists, writers, and the glitterati, all looking to bask in its beauty.
The coast transformed into the muse of Europe. Iconic figures like Richard Wagner found inspiration in the villa-strewn cliffs of Ravello, creating works that would echo through the annals of music history.
And you can't talk about artistic inspiration without mentioning Positano. In the 1950s, John Steinbeck wrote, "Positano bites deep." This town's charm is immortalized in his words. It is a dream place that isn't quite real when you are there and becomes beckoningly real after you have gone.
That quote gets me every time. Steinbeck nailed the enchantment of this coast. Now it attracts the jet set from all over the world, looking for that slice of the sublime, hoping to capture even a fraction of what inspired so many.
From a maritime superpower to a modern-day Eden for all things luxurious and lovely, the history of the Amalfi Coast is more layered than a lasagna. It's a story of rise, fall, and rebirth, proving that even the most powerful forces on Earth can't dim its luster.
A luster that we're going to explore in more detail as we uncover the must-see towns, the delicious secrets of the local cuisine, and the hidden gems waiting just off the beaten path. So folks, keep your imaginations dialed in as we continue our journey along the shimmering shores of the Amalfi Coast.
Now that we've set sail through history, let's drop anchor at some of the Amalfi Coast's most captivating ports of call. Forget the typical tourist brochures. Lara and I will be your personal guides to the must-see towns that add to the tapestry of this storied coastline.
That's right. And while Positano might be the poster child of the Amalfi Coast, with its stylish boutiques and postcard-perfect beaches, we're going to take you beyond those well-trodden, cobbled paths. Yes, we'll indulge in Positano's splendor, but we're also exploring the overlooked treasures each town holds. Ready, Luca?
Born ready, Lara. Let's start where many journeys on the coast begin, the town of Amalfi itself, unmistakably crowned by the majestic Duomo. Its striking facade, with the flight of stairs you mentioned earlier, sets the tone for the town's rich character.
And talk about dramatic entrances. I remember one time I hiked down from Ravello through the scenic Valle delle Ferriere just to arrive in Amalfi. And trust me, every step is like traveling through time. You've got your lush greenery, waterfalls, and ruins of old paper mills like Mother Nature's own living museum.
Right you are. Amalfi isn't just for leisurely strolls and gelato sampling, though we highly endorse those activities. It's a hub of living history, from its bygone maritime might to today's blend of local life and cosmopolitan vibes. It's as layered as, well, tiramisu. And if you wander off the beaten track, you'll find the quieter Piazza dello Spirito Santo. There's a fountain there where you can sip the freshest mountain water. It's like a free spa treatment for your insides. But we can't forget the Paper Museum, where you can delve into one of Amalfi's oldest crafts. I mean, who knew that before becoming a hotspot for suntans and selfies, Amalfi was famous for its paper?
Right? And now let's shimmy over to Ravello. Perched high above the sea, it's like the wise old grandparent overlooking its flashy family, full of stories and a bit of a show-off, with those unparalleled views from Villa Ruffolo and Villa Cimbrone.
You hit the nail on the head. Ravello's not just for catching breath, though the altitude might snatch it away. It's for art, music, and the soul. The Ravello Festival, with concerts overlooking the sea, might just be the closest thing to a musical heaven.
Imagine being surrounded by centuries of history, with the sea glinting below as orchestras play. If that's not a fairy tale, I don't know what is. But if you're seeking an adventure, dare to find the hidden pathways that lead to minuscule hamlets dotted around those hills.
Ah, the secret life of Ravello's outskirts. But let's zoom back to the coast and drop by Praiano. It's the sort of place whose name sounds like a whispered secret. Less bustling, more local charm, and the art. Have you seen the art, Lara?
Praiano's art scene is like finding an Easter egg in a video game, an unexpected delight. The San Luca Evangelista Church and its Majolica tiles, the street art mingling with historical architecture, Praiano is the canvas of the Amalfi Coast.
Not to mention, it's the place to be for sunset aficionados. The sun dipping below the horizon here is Mother Nature flaunting her painting skills. And for our night owls, the Africana Famous Club offers cocktails in a natural sea cave. That's literal rock and roll for you.
Speaking of natural beauty, let's not forget Scala, older than Amalfi and proudly traditional. Nestled in the green hills opposite Ravello, Scala is quiet, serene, like an antidote to the vivaciousness of its coastal cousins.
When you're in Scala, you feel like you've stumbled upon a secret Italy, away from the designer sunglasses and yacht parties. Here, it's about silence that's only broken by the toll of church bells and goat bells, not your notification chimes.
A welcome respite for our digital detoxers. Now we can't overlook Minori, with its sweet demeanor, ancient villas, and a penchant for pasta. This town is a foodie's hidden gem. Let's talk about those lemon groves.
You just said the magic word, lemons. Minori is draped in these golden orbs of citrus delight. They pop up in every dish here, from pasta to pastries. And if we're talking pastries, we cannot leave without mentioning Sal de Riso and his heavenly creation, a must for anyone with taste buds.
Truly divine. And for history buffs, Minori has roots that stretch back to the Romans. The Villa Romana, with its frescoes and mosaics, is like a peephole into ancient luxury. Who needs a time machine when you've got historically rich towns like this?
And finally, let's take our listeners on a stroll through Atrani, the charm bomb of the coast. It's the smallest town in Italy, clinging to the mountainside with an almost protective embrace.
Atrani is like a scene from an old Italian film. Every corner, a black and white snapshot of daily Italian life. The piazza is intimate, the alleys are whispering nooks of local lore, and the beach is a slice of tranquility.
There you have it, Globetrotters. Just a taste of the must-see towns on the Amalfi Coast. Each one tells a different story, holds a different mystery and serves a different flavor. This part of Italy is a mosaic of living art, ever ready to share its secrets with those eager to explore.
Indeed, Luca. And speaking of flavors, stay tuned as we take your palates on a culinary adventure along the coast next. The Amalfi Coast isn't just a feast for the eyes, it's a banquet waiting to dance across your taste buds. So listeners, loosen those belts a notch. We're diving into the flavors of Amalfi. All this talk of must-see towns has worked up quite the appetite, hasn't it, Luca?
It certainly has, Lara. Food lovers rejoice. We're about to embark on a culinary journey that'll make you want to kiss your fingers like an Italian chef who's just perfected their mama's secret recipe.
Oh, we're not just spilling the beans here. We're tossing them into a rich, aromatic stew of coastal cuisine that is the heart of the Amalfi Coast.
Let's start with the star of the show, the crown jewel of Amalfi's culinary scene, the sfusato amalfitano. Those lemons that aren't just giant orbs of sunshine, but have a sweetness that's like a love letter penned by summer itself.
Amalfi lemons are like the Swiss Army knives of citrus. They're in everything from appetizers to desserts, and they give birth to the nectar of the gods, Limoncello. That sweet, tart digestive, which I warn you, goes down a little too easily after a sumptuous dinner.
Take it from someone who once thought limoncello was a harmless lemony soda. Spoiler alert, it's not. But let's talk about antipasti. Ever tried thinly sliced melanzane a shirili? That's zucchini blossoms to you and me, delicately battered, fried, and whispered sweet nothings by a chef who knows their craft.
Whispered sweet nothings? Sure, Luca. We'll go with that. And we can't skim over the symphony of seafood. The Tyrrhenian Sea isn't just a pretty face. It offers bountiful catches that grace the tables here. Spaghetti al vongole, anyone? Clams that taste like they've soaked up the very essence of the sea.
Oh, those clams have PhDs in deliciousness. And here's a pro tip. When you're indulging in seafood pasta or risotto along the coast, al dente is the law. It's a bite that sings of perfect texture, mixed with the zest of the sea, and often a splash of that Amalfi lemon.
Oh, and let's not overlook the scialatielli, those thicker, handmade pasta ribbons born right here, often swimming alongside fresh seafood and a generous drizzle of local olive oil. If pasta could give you a hug, this would be it.
Love it. And you know, while we're basking in the carbs, we can't ignore the gnocchi alla sorrentina, soft, pillowy gnocchi in a rich tomato sauce with melted mozzarella on top. It's comfort food that could probably solve most of the world's problems.
Only most? I'm a believer it could solve all, Luca. And as if the lemons weren't enough, the coast's tomatoes deserve their own fan club. Whether it's in a salad with that local buffalo mozzarella, or on a pizza, yes, friends, real pizza from the region that invented it, they're a burst of flavor in every bite.
Speaking of mozzarella, have you ever watched it being made, Lara? It's a process of artistry, the mozzarella fior di latte. Seeing that fresh, creamy cheese come to life is a culinary ballet. To taste it is to hear violins.
Oh, violins indeed. But make room, because here comes the main course, the pesce all'acqua pazza, or fish in crazy water. The name alone tells you you're in for a treat, a light yet savory broth with a splash of that crazy water, which, shockingly, is not actually crazy.
Not crazy, just crazy good. And let's not forget the continued bounty from the sea. Squid, octopus, and the ever-popular totani e patate, squid and potatoes. It's like a maritime twist on meat and potatoes for the soul.
I'm swooning, Luca. Now, to satisfy that sweet tooth, we have to go back to our courteous lemons. Delizia al limone, this lemon sponge cake soaked in limoncello syrup, is a hug for your palate and a peck on the cheek of your sweet tooth.
And let's not forget the local gelato. The creativity here knows no bounds, from your classic chocolate and hazelnut to the more adventurous flavors infused with lemon, figs, or even basil. It's a chillingly good work of art.
Art in a cone or a cup. And since we've already crossed over guiltlessly into dessert, we can't ignore the much-loved torta caprese, a flourless chocolate and almond cake that'll make you rethink your relationship with gluten altogether.
Folks, take this journey seriously. There's a saying here, one does not live by bread alone, but by the torta caprese as well, or something like that.
And every morsel tells a story, a secret handed down through generations. The cuisine here isn't just about sating hunger. It's a narrative, a cultural expression, a communal ritual that pilgrims like us are invited to partake in.
That's the beauty of the Amalfi Coast's flavors. They welcome you in, treat you like family, and send you home with a belly full of joy and a heart yearning to return.
Well, dear listeners, I hope you've eaten a hearty meal before tuning in, because if not, you're probably starving now. But fear not. Up next, we'll be exploring the secret spots and hidden gems of the Amalfi Coast, those off-the-map locales that locals love and travelers dream of discovering. Stay with us as we lift the veil on the coast's best-kept secrets.
Welcome back, intrepid listeners. I hope you're feeling full from our culinary expedition, because it's time to work off some of that feasting as we hunt down the secret spots and hidden gems of the Amalfi Coast.
Think of this as your exclusive VIP pass to the concealed corners that don't always make it into your travel guidebook. Places that might require a sturdy pair of shoes, a sense of adventure, and perhaps a little bit of that famous Italian dolce far niente, the sweetness of doing nothing.
That's right, because some of these places are perfect for just absorbing the atmosphere. Let's kick off with one of my favorites, the Fiordo de Furore. This hidden sea inlet, with its rugged cliffs and turquoise waters, is like a geological love letter that many speed past on the SS-163 without realizing it's there.
Absolutely stunning, Luca. The Fiordo de Furore looks as though it was carved by Neptune himself. This natural fjord has a tiny beach and a cluster of ancient fishermen's houses. It's like stepping backward in time, or into a painting.
You might even catch the annual diving competition held there, if you're brave enough to watch folks leap from the bridge high above into the waters below. It's not for the faint-hearted, that's for sure. Now let's venture a little off the beaten path to the Vallone delle Ferriere, Amalfi's Valley of the Ironworks. You'll find the ruins of old paper mills and Europe's oldest natural reserve here, with flora that looks plucked from the primeval world. That hike is something else. Waterfalls and ancient buildings all wrapped up in the greenest greenery you've ever seen. It's like Mother Nature held her breath and preserved it all just for us in the Vallone.
And if we're speaking of wonders, do you remember the Cave of the Smeraldo, Luca, the Grotta dello Smeraldo?
Oh, the Emerald Grotto. Easier to reach by boat, which is part of the fun. It's like discovering a pirate's hideout. Stalagmites, stalactites, and an underwater nativity scene, all bathed in this ethereal emerald light that filters through the water.
It's otherworldly, literally glowing with enchantment. And speaking of ethereal experiences, the quiet and often overlooked town of Conca dei Marini offers the splendid Church of San Pancrazio, perched favorably for those impeccable sea views. It's the Amalfi Coast's version of Serenity now.
For the explorers who fancy a challenging walk, let's talk about the Path of the Gods, or Sentiero degli Dei. It's a hike that'll work those calf muscles and reward you with the most incredible scenery you could imagine, chalky mountains tumbling into the blue sea below.
And you'll want to keep your camera ready. Every twist and turn is a photo begging to be captured. Just remember to look where you step to. It is a path named after the gods, after all.
True. Now, for those who'd like to swing by a lesser-known yet astoundingly beautiful beach, there's Marina di Praia. Tucked between cliffs, reached by a footpath cutting through the rock, it's like stepping through a portal into a secret seaside enclave.
It's the perfect hideaway for a spot of sunbathing or a quiet moment with a good book. And the sea there, it's so clear. You can see the history etched into the very pebbles below.
From the pebbles to the peaks, and for those feeling a tad more adventurous, the hike to Monte Trecali offers a great escape. Rising above Bomarano, the views from its summit spread out in a panoramic feast. It's a bit of a climb, but the reward is a 360-degree glimpse of paradise.
And paradise isn't complete without a garden. So, for a literal hidden gem, might I suggest the tranquil Ruffolo Gardens in Ravello. Moro and jasmine flowers with a view that makes you feel like a bird gliding above the coastline. That's the Ruffolo Gardens.
Definitely worth a visit, especially when the notes of the Ravello Festival concerts drift through the air, magic upon magic. Speaking of Ravello, let's not overlook Villa Cimbrone with its own stunning gardens and the Terrace of Infinity. It's like standing at the edge of the world, isn't it, Lara?
It sure is. Those marble busts gazing out to sea alongside you. It's best enjoyed in the quiet of the morning or the golden hours before sunset. Just ideal for that meditative moment or a particularly romantic pause.
And for a sip of the local life, one might stumble into one of the many tiny cantinas tucked away in these towns, like in Praiano or Scala. They might not have a sign, but follow the scent of locally produced wine and the sound of clinking glasses, and you're in for a treat.
Ah, yes. Enjoy a glass of Costa d'Amalfi or a bold Taurasi with the locals, who'll tell tales as rich as the soil their grapes grow in. And who knows, you might end up learning a centuries-old family recipe or two if you smile brightly enough.
See, our listeners are getting the inside scoop today. And these gems are just the beginning. The Amalfi Coast is a treasure trove waiting to be opened, full of stories waiting to be told, and experiences just begging to be lived.
So go forth and find these hidden wonders. Make your own tracks and create memories that will sparkle in the sunlight of your mind forever.
And with those sparkling words of wisdom, it's time to take a brief pause. Soak in the sounds of the Amalfi Coast, and when we return, Lara and I will bring you even more personal stories straight from the heart of the coast. Stay with us.
Welcome back, intrepid listeners, to Travel with Lara and Luca. After unveiling some of the Amalfi Coast's most secretive slices of paradise, it's time we zoom in on the intimate moments that make travel here so personal.
That's right, Lara. It's those up-close encounters, the human connections, and the spontaneous experiences that often stick with us long after we've left a place. And the Amalfi Coast is fertile ground for such memories.
I remember once I was in a little trattoria in Amalfi town. I won't say where, you have to find your own, but I ordered a simple insalata caprese, expecting, the usual. What I got was a lesson in tomato slicing from the chef, who also happened to be the owner and waiter.
Ah, the many hats of the Italian chef. And their tomatoes are something else, aren't they? They hold the essence of the sun within them. Did you pick up any slicing skills?
I can confidently say that my tomato slicing game has been elevated to near maestro levels, all thanks to an unscheduled tutorial in that tiny kitchen.
It's those interactions that you can't plan for. They're the magic of travel. Speaking of unplanned, I once visited a vineyard near Furor, nestled between the cliffs. I thought I'd try to impress the winemaker with my modest knowledge of wine. You know, the delicate notes, the complex bouquets.
And let me guess, your attempt ended in a charmingly tragic opera of wine faux pas?
Tragic is a strong word, Lara. I prefer comedic. I went on about undertones and finishing notes until the winemaker put a robust glass of local red in my hand and simply said, "Basta, just drink."
Talk about a humbling sip. But that's the authentic Amalfi approach to life. Sometimes you just have to let the experience take over.
True that. I still buy a bottle of that red every year. It's become a tradition. And speaking of traditions, our listeners should know about the artisans scattered throughout the coast.
Yes, the ceramic workshops and paper-making studios found in the narrow streets of these towns. I recall wandering into a ceramic shop in Vietri sul Mare. The air was thick with the earthy scent of clay, and there was this one artist, I'll call him Marco because, well, that was his name.
Quite the storyteller you are, Lara.
Grazie, Luca. So Marco was focused on painting the most intricate designs on a platter. He didn't even look up as I entered, but sensing my curiosity, slid a paintbrush into my hand. Next thing I knew, I was a makeshift apprentice, adorning a tiny ceramic tile with what was to be the worst lemon ever to grace pottery.
And yet, I bet that lemon tile is one of your most treasured possessions.
It's center stage on my kitchen wall, a beautiful reminder that sometimes imperfection is the truest form of beauty.
Absolutely. And then there are the moments all travelers dread, but end up laughing about later. Like the time I completely ignored the local advice about the sun and spent an entire day beach hopping from Positano to Minori.
A bronze god you were not, I take it?
Think more along the lines of a lobster fresh out of the pot. But it's a testament to the kindness here. A group of nanas in Maori clucked over me like I was their own, smothering me with aloe and tut-tutting in rapid Italian. I understood maybe one word in 10, but their care needed no translation.
Lesson learned: respect the sun and always listen to the nanas. On the topic of kindness, one of my favorite memories was getting lost in the hillside labyrinth of Scala. I wandered into what I thought was a public garden, only to be met by an elderly gentleman who turned out to be the owner.
Awkwardly caught trespassing, Lara?
Just a tad, but instead of chasing me off, he showed me around, explaining the various fruit trees and herbs, his private Eden. He sent me on my way with a sprig of rosemary and sage, and a story of how his family had lived there for generations.
These towns, they're living storybooks, where every person is a chapter, every garden a verse, and every shared moment a line that stays with you.
That's what travel is all about, isn't it? Not just the seeing, but the doing, the tasting, the listening, and most importantly, the feeling. The Amalfi Coast, with its sun-kissed landscape and the warmth of its people, offers a tapestry of personal interactions that weave an unforgettable traveler's tale.
And we want our listeners to weave their tales too. Walk into that little shop, start that conversation, accept that spontaneous invitation, because that's where the real Amalfi, the one that lives in the hearts of those who reside here, truly shines.
Well said, Luca. And after those heartwarming stories, we'll be gearing up next to delve into the quirky side of the Amalfi Coast. Stay tuned as we share the weird and the wonderful of this enchanting slice of Italy. And we're back, my dear wayfarers. If you've just joined us on Travel with Lara and Luca, you've arrived at a wonderfully peculiar segment of our show. It's time to peel back the curtain on the Amalfi Coast to reveal a kaleidoscope of the weird and wonderful.
That's right, Lara. We've talked about hidden gems and local characters, but now we're about to dip our toes into the quirky traditions and fascinating facts that make this place truly one of a kind.
Take, for instance, the artwork you'll find wandering through the streets. Now, we're not talking frescoes or sculptures. We're talking about the vibrant displays on local garage doors.
Garage doors. You heard that correctly, listeners. Here, the mundane becomes the canvas for whimsical works of art. Imagine pulling up to your parking spot only to be greeted by a hand-painted seascape or an intricate lemon grove.
And the funny thing is, you'll see tourists, myself included, snapping as many pictures of these as they are of the historic sites. They're a testament to the creativity infused into every aspect of coastal life.
Now here's another unique feature of the coast, the talking walls of Vietri sul Mare. Lara, this is one of my favorite anecdotes.
Oh yes, I love this one too. The walls of Vietri sul Mare act as a sort of community bulletin board. Residents don't just chat over coffee, they communicate through poetic lines and political slogans, all written across the town's surfaces.
It's essentially Twitter for the literati of Vietri, but way more aesthetically pleasing and without the character limit.
Exactly. And speaking of odd traditions, the historical regatta of the ancient maritime republics is one competitive spectacle not to be missed, if your timing is right.
Indeed, it's a historical throwback to the days when Amalfi, Pisa, Genoa, and Venice ruled the waves. These cities compete in a boat race that turns serious oar skills into aquatic pageantry. Complete with period costumes, it's like watching history in HD.
The pageantry is something else. You've got lavish displays, colorful boats, and an atmosphere charged with as much pride as an opera house on opening night.
And as we're talking about the sea, there's an oddity beneath the waves that's every bit as peculiar as it is enchanting: underwater nativity scenes.
That's right. Along the coast, it's not just about putting up a Christmas tree. Divers place figures of the Nativity, the Presepe on the seabed, a tradition blending the region's strong religious heritage with its ever-present marine life.
There's something marvelously odd about fish swimming among the wise men. It's a celebration that manages to be both sacred and slightly surreal.
Now, here's a fun factoid that listeners with a sweet tooth will appreciate. Did you know that tiramisu claims to have roots here in the Campania region? Although it's a hotly contested fact.
Oh, that's a dangerous topic, Lara. Almost every region in Italy will claim the origin of tiramisu. But hey, we're on the Amalfi Coast, so why not? After all, doesn't everything seem a little sweeter here?
Perhaps it's the limoncello talking, but I wholeheartedly agree. And speaking of sweets, there's a local saying that you haven't really tasted gelato until you've tried it under the Amalfi moonlight.
There's a saying like that? Well, if there isn't, There should be. It's an experience, a nightly ritual almost, a proper homage to the moon with every creamy spoonful.
The Amalfi moon seems to cast a spell on the landscape, turning even a simple gelato into an otherworldly delight. Combine it with a passeggiata, an evening stroll, and you're living la dolce vita.
And let's not forget the unusual flora and fauna of the coast. We've got the typical lemon and olive trees, but then there's the rare fiori di luna, or moonflowers, that only bloom at night, filling the dark with their scent.
The way those white petals catch the moon's glow, it's like each one is a little love letter to the night sky, a truly ethereal sight.
Another charming oddity, one that I find particularly endearing, is the local affection for street cats. Throughout the towns, especially Positano and Atrani, you'll find these pampered felines, unofficially adopted by entire neighborhoods.
Yes, Positano's piazza is their kingdom, and then the locals their humble subjects, offering fish, treats, and cuddles. These cats are so revered they practically have citizenship.
It all adds to the wonderful tapestry of the Amalfi Coast, a place where history, nature, and the eccentric coexist in delightful harmony.
Right, Luca? And now that we've embraced the weird and the wonderful, it's time to dust off our maps and straighten our compasses as we head towards the practical side of our journey. Coming up, we've got travel tips and side excursions that will help you navigate the Amalfi Coast like seasoned travelers. So stay tuned as we continue our love letter to this Italian slice of heaven.
And we're back with Travel with Lara and Luca. It's time to share those golden nuggets of wisdom that can transform a good vacation on the Amalfi Coast into an exquisite, one-of-a-kind adventure. Starting with travel tips straight from our own experiences and misadventures.
Yes, let's make sure our listeners learn from our blunders so they don't have to make their own. Although, where's the fun in that, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's the blunders that give us our best stories, but let's enhance those stories with a little sage advice. First things first, transportation. The Amalfi Coast may be beautiful, but its roads can be as twisty as a bowl of fusilli.
The Sita buses are a lifesaver for getting around without the hassle of driving yourself. They're affordable, and the drivers navigate those hairpin bends like they're cruising on a straight highway in Kansas.
But remember, timing is everything. The buses can get crowded, especially in peak season. My pro tip, grab an early morning ride before the crowds swarm, and you'll not only secure a seat, but maybe even get a window for those breathtaking views.
That's gold, Luca. And speaking of transportation, let's talk ferries. There's something utterly sublime about approaching these coastal towns from the water. It gives you a perspective that road travel just can't match.
Absolutely. Plus, on a ferry, you escape the road traffic and the bus timetables. Just be mindful of the sea. If it's choppy, those with a delicate stomach may want to pop a motion sickness tablet.
Now, about those narrow, vertical streets, pack comfortable footwear. This is not the place to break in those new Italian leather shoes you picked up in Rome.
I learned that lesson the hard way. Ended up looking like I was practicing for a high-stakes grape stomping competition. My feet were not happy.
Grapes were not involved, folks. Just very sore feet. Okay, about dining out, reservations are your best friend, especially if you want that coveted sea view terrace spot at a popular restaurant.
Ah yes, unless you're content with peering longingly at other diners from the sidewalk, call ahead.
And while dining out is a highlight, do try the local markets in Delhi. They offer an array of divine produce that you can whip up into a picnic. Imagine a spread of fresh mozzarella, tomatoes, basil, and crusty bread, all to be enjoyed on a secluded cliffside or beach.
Now that's romance. And when shopping, don't sleep on the boutiques and local artisans. Not only will you find unique handcrafted treasures, but your patronage supports the local economy and keeps traditional crafts alive.
Speaking of shopping, if you're considering bringing home a bottle of limoncello or wine, check your country's customs regulations first. Because trust me, the devastation of having your Amalfi flavors confiscated is a very real heartbreak.
Oh, and don't even get me started on scheduling your return flight for too early in the morning. I once thought a dawn departure from the coast would be a breeze. It wasn't. Buses weren't running, taxis were scarce, and I nearly missed my flight.
Be kind to future you, plan for logistics, with the generous assumption that not everything will go perfectly.
Now for side excursions, Capri is the obvious choice with its Blue Grotto and ritzy Piazzetta. But don't overlook the less famous siblings like Ischia with its thermal spas or Prohita, a colorful fishing village come to life.
And if your wanderlust takes you inland, the ancient town of Paestum awaits. It boasts some of the best preserved Greek temples this side of Athens. And buffalo mozzarella farms, those creamy, dreamy delights straight from the source.
My mouth is watering at the thought. But back to the coast, consider a day trip to the neighboring Sorrento coast. It's the Amalfi's less touristy cousin, where you can find some tranquility amid rustic scenery.
The take-home message here, guys. Balance structure with spontaneity. Book that sunset cruise, but also take an afternoon to simply wander.
Life on the Amalfi Coast moves with its rhythm, its heartbeat. Tune into it, and you'll discover not just a destination, but an experience that will resonate within you for years to come. Well, dear listeners, as the sunset paints the Amalfi sky with a palette only nature could hold, we draw near to the end of our journey together today.
It's been an absolute joy to share the charm and character of Italy's divine coast with you all. We've wandered through lemon groves and sun-drenched piazzas. We've uncovered historical secrets and savored the flavors of the Mediterranean.
And we dove into the depths to find hidden emerald grottos and scaled the heights to tread paths laid by the gods themselves. Through this all, we reaffirmed that the Amalfi Coast isn't simply a place to visit. It's a realm to be felt deep in the soul.
Whether it was through tales of the past, recounted with the fervor of historians, or the humor of two friends chancing upon an unexpected adventure, we endeavored to bring a piece of Amalfi into your lives.
Indubitably, Lara. And what a treasure trove of anecdotes we collected, from my lobster impersonation to Lara's tomato artistry. As we say here on the coast, la vita è un viaggio, life is a journey.
And aren't we just fortunate, Luca? Amalfi has a unique way of making even the most ordinary moments feel extraordinary. You might be simply sipping coffee on a terrace, but with the views there, it's like sharing an espresso with the gods.
So true. And remember, listeners, each turn untraveled holds the potential for your next great story. The Amalfi Coast awaits, a canvas for your memories, a backdrop to your dreams, and most certainly, a challenge to any preconceived notion of what beauty can be. Before we sign off, I've got a final tip for you. Embrace the Italian art of il dolce far niente, the sweetness of doing nothing. Sometimes, the best way to experience a place is to simply be. Let the world unfold around you at its own pace.
And as you embrace that sweetness, let's not forget about the sweetness of sharing. Connect with us on social media and share your Amalfi reminiscences or dreams. We love hearing from fellow travelers and dreaming souls alike.
So, dear friends, until our next episode of Travel with Lara and Luca, we leave you with images of the Amalfi sunset in your mind and an invitation to dream and then live out loud your travel fantasies.
Ciao and safe journeys.
Ciao a tutti.